Welcome back. Let's take you to this now. Israel is still adamant that it will launch attacks after Iran launched drones and ballistic missiles. Iran says it stands ready to retaliate should Israel go ahead with the threat. Now, many countries have called on the two countries to exercise restraint. Fears are mounting that this political tension will affect the Middle East region, where the war in Gaza is still raging on. For the latest, we cross now live to Alex Cadier in Tel Aviv for us. Alex, good afternoon, and thank you so much for your time. Now, there's been no real tangible feedback, following Israel's war cabinet meetings to discuss the next move, I would say. I mean, the question then remains, is this attack on Iran imminent?
Well, we don't know exactly. Clearly, I don't think there's going to be an attack on Iran. And actually, that's what we're hearing in the last few hours from US national security sources, saying that it is much more likely that Israel will show the kind of restraint the international community has been asking for by targeting Iran's proxies, so Hamas or Hezbollah or the Houthi rebels in Yemen, particularly Hezbollah in southern Lebanon. We've just heard that a car, in fact, has been struck by an Israeli drone in that area just in the last few minutes. So we understand that actually the most likely response from Israel at this point will be a targeted one against Iran's proxies, unlike Iran not targeting Iranian soil directly from Israel. So certainly what appears to be happening is Israel heeding that warning from the countries that defended the skies over this country just a few days ago, hearing President Biden when he says, take the win, do not escalate this into what could have been a war in the Middle East between two nuclear capable countries.
Now, just talking about that, there's been lots of speculation in as far as, what was the reluctance or delay from particularly Benjamin Netanyahu. He has been facing a lot of pressure since, the attack that Israel waged on Hamas. Could the delay have been probably tensions rising around his insistence, to cling to power, as reports indicate, do you think?
I don't know that it's linked to domestic Israeli politics. I think it's more linked to the pressure and the conversations with Israel's biggest ally in the United States. I think what's clear is that, if anything, the political pressure on Benjamin Netanyahu would have been to respond immediately and very forcefully, to ignore those requests from Israel's allies for restraint. In fact, we know that in the war cabinet, the Prime Minister was the voice urging that restraint and finding an alternative way to hit back against Iran. So certainly that appears to be the case. But we know that on Friday, the day before more than 300 Iranian drones and missiles flew across the sky to try and hit targets in Israel, the war cabinet had decided that an immediate retaliation would be their policy. Clearly, calls from the United States immediately after Iran's attack for restraint were heeded by the Prime Minister and by the Israeli government. Now, that's not to say there's going to be a complete de-escalation of this conflict. Certainly not. There's going to be a de-escalation between Iran waging a shadow war in Israel and Israel responding against those proxies. What we can expect, at least that's what we're hearing from the Israeli officials, is for them to try and build a regional coalition, perhaps with neighboring Jordan, with those other countries who shared intelligence on the Saturday against that Iranian attack, including Saudi Arabia and the UAE. So clearly there will be a concerted diplomatic effort. The foreign minister here has written 32 letters to 32 countries urging to up the pressure on Iran to label the Revolutionary Guard a terrorist organization. For now, that seems to be the Israeli course of action.
And that would be welcome news. So, Alex, if these restraint calls are in fact heeded too, it would probably bode well on various, factors and fronts, even a diplomatic solution at this point. Let's then talk about just how this standoff has affected economic activities, in the Gulf region, such as oil prices and aviation and all the like.
Well, look, I think it's been very complicated to get flights in and out of Israel. They closed the airspace over Israel, over Jordan, over Lebanon for several hours while this strike was oncoming, and you can understand why. The complete, total just scale of that strike by Iran the recklessness of it would have made it impossible to fly in and out of Israel. Just where I'm standing, you see the planes coming over, landing at Ben Gurion Airport between Jerusalem and Tel Aviv. That was shut. However, one thing to say is that the shekel, the Israeli currency, is up 1.3% against the dollar, at least it was yesterday, as a result of what was being perceived by the markets as Israeli restraint. So although the strike by Iran was certainly logistically complicated and made travel in and out of the region incredibly difficult, the fact that Israel has shown restraint seems to be welcomed by the markets, looking at that maybe counterbalancing that economic effect. But certainly the question for anybody trying to come here or trying to leave here, can we, how, when, that is never clear. And certainly that de-escalation may simplify things a little bit.
Let's turn our focus now back, to Gaza. There are reports that Israel has suspended its intention to attack in Rafah. Now, we know, of course, that there was communication to Palestinians to not be in the northern parts, at least, of Gaza because of imminent, attacks in that area. How true are some of these reports that we're hearing?
Well, they have delayed that operation, they say, because of Iran's attack, and they want to make sure that that front is covered as well. Behind the scenes, we know there are disagreements between the United States and Israel. We know the United States says without the evacuation of civilians from Rafah, it would be a mass casualty event. So that is what Israel is now trying to plan for. We've had insights to some of the conversations between Jake Sullivan, the US National Security Advisor, and his Israeli counterparts. According to reporting, he in a meeting knocked his fist on the table saying, "You can't get 50 trucks of aid into northern Gaza. How are you going to evacuate 1 million civilians? It's going to take 4 months." That is also part of why there is a delay to this operation. The Israelis now heeding those warnings from the United States, trying to understand a plan to evacuate those civilians from Rafah. Clearly, the north, not an option. The Israelis have said that's a military zone, no one should go there. So perhaps one plan that we've heard is the UAE, the United Arab Emirates, will create humanitarian bubbles in central Gaza where they will allow for safety and food and medicine to be administered to those civilians in Gaza, and also have very clear locations for people to go for safety in Gaza, something they haven't had for 6 months.
All right, Alex, thank you so much for that update. Let's leave it there for now. Alex Cadier there live for us from Tel Aviv, of course, giving us the very latest in as far as what is happening in the Middle East. More importantly, what is happening in those cabinet meetings, Israel's war cabinet meetings, that is.